Welcome to the Good Health Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Good, a certified functional medicine practitioner, registered nutritionist, and author. In this podcast, we delve into the world of energy and immune health and wellness with positivity, from optimal health and energy to stress and burnout, right through to immune conditions such as thyroid and autoimmune disease. We deep dive into functional medicine, nutritional medicine, and lifestyle medicine, as well as the personal stories of our amazing guests, from Olympians to famous faces and guest experts from all different parts of the health and wellness world. It's time to stop letting your health hold you back and become the optimal version of you. Don't forget to come and join the conversation on Instagram at good_health, that's GOODE, or visit the website nicolegoodhealth.com to find out more. Welcome to today's episode of the Good Health Podcast. On today's episode, we are looking at the impact of chronic inflammation on aging and steps that you can take to help you to combat it. The first thing we need to look at and consider is inflammation and what it actually is. We immediately get a negative connotation when we hear the word inflammation. We think it's a bad thing. Inflammation isn't bad. It's a natural, necessary response by the body's immune system to help to protect us. It's helping to protect us from injury, from infection, from any other harmful stimuli. So it's not a negative thing, but we automatically get this negative connotation of it. The reason for this is that inflammation should be short-term, it should be acute, and it plays this critical role in healing and protection. But chronic inflammation is a very, very different story. And when we hear the word inflammation and the way that it's thrown around these days, what we're often talking about is chronic inflammation. And that's why we immediately go to this negative connotation with it. When this inflammation becomes prolonged and it's systemic in the body, it can then cause damage to the body's cells, tissues, and organs. And that accelerates this aging process and can contribute to various age-related diseases as well as other illnesses. When it's contributing to these age-related diseases, it's often referred to as inflammaging. And this is at the heart of many of the health challenges that we associate with getting older. So today what we're going to do, we're going to look at the science behind chronic inflammation and its role in aging. We're going to look at how that affects cellular health, metabolism, and the immune system, and how it contributes to conditions like cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, and autoimmune disorders. More importantly, we're going to look at some practical research-backed strategies that you can implement into your life to combat this inflammation, including dietary changes, lifestyle modifications, and therapies that can really help to slow down the aging process and improve your quality of life. So let's jump straight into understanding chronic inflammation. So what actually is it? At its core, it is a body's defense mechanism. So if a pathogen comes into the body, if we've got damaged cells, if there are toxins, inflammation is a key part of the body's defense. If you think when you cut your hand, you get inflammation at the site of the cut. And what that is the healing process. And it's really important. And that is the type of inflammation that is good. It's this protective response. It's involving these immune cells, blood vessels, and molecular mediators that work together to help to eliminate the cause of the injury or to clear out the damaged tissue and to start initiating repair. So this acute inflammatory response is essential. It's really important for healing and maintaining that health. Acute is the key word here. So that inflammation flares up in response to the stimuli, and then just as quickly, it's going to return back to normal as soon as that is resolved. When inflammation becomes chronic, it turns into this kind of slow burning fire that really doesn't extinguish itself. So instead of resolving when the injury or the threat has gone and is dying down, that chronic inflammation continues to persist without a sort of really obvious immediate cause. And over time, this constant low-level inflammation can damage the healthy tissue, cells, and organs that lead to these long-term health problems. So chronic inflammation doesn't just harm specific parts of the body. It actually then starts impacting us at the cellular level. And this accelerates this biological aging. And this is the concept of inflammaging. It's really highlighting that link between persistent inflammation and age-related diseases. Here's how it works. This is what we get. We get cellular damage. That's the first thing. So chronic inflammation is releasing these harmful substances like free radicals and cytokines, which damage the cells and the DNA. And that leads to this premature cell death or dysfunction. And that makes the body less capable of repairing itself. So we get this cellular damage. We also get mitochondrial dysfunction. So the mitochondria, we've talked about lots on this podcast. They play this crucial role in energy production. Chronic inflammation actually impairs their function. So we get reduced energy levels, and that causes cellular fatigue. and that again contributes to the aging process. Chronic inflammation also puts the immune system on a constant alert. So we get this immune system overactivation, and that can lead to the immune system becoming exhausted over time. Can also lead to susceptibility to infections, but more importantly, it can contribute to the development of things like autoimmune conditions, where the body's immune system is starting to attack its own tissue. We can also then get tissue and organ damage. So we know that persistent inflammation causes this gradual damage to tissues and organs, and we're less capable of repairing if we've got the chronic inflammation. Therefore, our risk of these chronic illnesses like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, and even cancer are all worse if we've got chronic inflammation going on in the body. So it's really important that we distinguish between acute inflammation and chronic inflammation. Acute inflammation is a natural process of repair and part of our defense system in the body. Chronic inflammation is accelerating aging and it's causing us health problems. Now, cytokines have a role to play in this chronic inflammation. So these are small proteins that are released by cells, particularly immune cells, and they play a really vital role in cell signaling during inflammation. So in acute inflammation, the cytokines will recruit immune cells to the site of injury or infection to help begin that healing process. And that's a positive thing. However, in chronic inflammation, there's an overproduction of these pro-inflammatory cytokines, such as interleukins, so IL-6, IL-1, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. And these cytokines perpetuate this inflammatory response and create this vicious cycle of tissue damage and immune activation. Chronic inflammation is also really closely linked with that oxidative stress. So that condition where we get that imbalance between free radicals, those unstable molecules that can damage cells, and the body's ability to neutralize those free radicals with antioxidants. So oxidative stress actually further amplifies the inflammation, and we get this feedback loop. We get this constant cycle of inflammation, oxidative stress that just accelerates that aging process more. And over time, that cumulative damage from oxidative stress and chronic inflammation leads to those conditions like heart disease, neurodegenerative diseases, and metabolic disorders. So what causes this chronic inflammation? Lots of different factors, and particularly in our modern way of life, that can contribute to this chronic inflammation. The first thing that we have to look at is your diet, poor nutrition, diets that are high in refined sugars, trans fats, processed foods, all major contributors to chronic inflammation. And these foods really promote that pro-inflammatory cytokines and oxidative stress. The next one is a sedentary lifestyle. So if we're not getting enough physical activity, we are then getting a slower metabolism. We're getting that increased fat accumulation, particularly that visceral fat. That's highly inflammatory for your body. Then there's chronic stress. So long-term stress leads to an overload and overproduction of cortisol, which is the hormone that can suppress the immune system's anti-inflammatory response. That imbalance, again, fosters that inflammation. One of the things that we know cortisol, if we've got too much of it in the body, can do is this suppression of the anti-inflammatory response by our immune system. And it's really important that we keep that balance. So stress management is going to play a really important role. We've then got environmental toxins. So exposure to things like pollutants, chemicals, pesticides, they all contribute to inflammation by increasing oxidative stress. And that is directly damaging to the cells. Then we also have things like sleep. So sleep is a really critical time for the body to be able to repair itself. While we're asleep is when our immune system comes out, mops up all the damaged cells, keeps our body healthy, and is repairing. If we have chronic sleep deprivation, we're getting increased levels of pro-inflammatory markers, and that is further fueling that inflammation. So chronic inflammation is really quite silent in the body, but it's a powerful driver of this aging and disease. And understanding its mechanisms allows us to take those proactive steps to help combat its effects and slow down that aging process. And when we're talking aging, we're talking about the aging at a cellular level. We're talking about aging of our cells and of our body. So let's have a look at how chronic inflammation actually accelerates aging. Chronic inflammation is at the root of many diseases commonly associated with aging. So when inflammation persists over time, it contributes to the gradual deterioration of tissues and organs, and it makes the body a lot more susceptible and vulnerable to serious conditions. So we've got things like cardiovascular disease. Inflammation plays a really critical role in the development of atherosclerosis, which is where the plaque builds up in the arteries. And this process starts to damage the inner linings of our arteries. It's often triggered by things like oxidative stress and high cholesterol, and it sparks this inflammatory response. So over time, chronic inflammation contributes to the hardening of our arteries, increasing that risk of things like heart attack and stroke. We have neurodegenerative diseases. So again, these are associated with aging, things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Inflammation in the brain is a major driver of neuronal damage. So inflammatory molecules such as cytokines can cross that blood-brain barrier and lead to chronic neuroinflammation. And that damages the brain cells and accelerates that cognitive decline. And we don't have to go as far as having developed Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. We can see people who have brain fog and are just starting to get little signs of cognitive decline. And a lot of that is coming from chronic neuroinflammation. We then have things like the type 2 diabetes. So chronic inflammation, we know, interferes with our insulin signaling, and that leads to insulin resistance, which is a key factor in developing diabetes. Also, your adipose tissue, so particularly that visceral fat, so that's the fat around the organs, releases pro-inflammatory cytokines that impair the body's ability to regulate your blood sugar levels effectively. So it puts you at more risk of developing something like diabetes. Persistent inflammation also creates an environment that promotes the survival and growth of damaged cells. So over time, that can lead to mutations in our cells and the development of things like cancers. So inflammatory markers such as tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin-6 often elevated in cancer patients, and that indicates that this inflammation is a significant factor in tumor progression. The other area where chronic inflammation plays a part in aging-related disorders is in arthritis and joint degeneration. So we know that chronic inflammation is a key player in these degenerative joint disorders, things like osteoarthritis. And that ongoing inflammation leads to the breakdown of cartilage, and it causes that pain and stiffness and reduced mobility. We then, of course, have that knock-on effect of if you've got those things, it's much harder to exercise, which then increases the inflammation in the body, and we end up in a vicious cycle again. So that's looking at the age-related disorders. As we discussed earlier, the mitochondria also have a role to play here. So mitochondria's function declines naturally as we age. These are the energy powerhouses of our cells. The chronic inflammation actually accelerates that mitochondrial dysfunction. So it reduces the ability to produce ATP, which is the energy currency of our cell. Not only is the mitochondrial function declining as we age, if we've got chronic inflammation, it's actually accelerating that decline. And that energy deficit leads to things like fatigue, cellular aging, and increased inflammation. So again, that increased inflammation, we're getting that vicious cycle, further perpetuating inflammation and creating this really damaging loop that we can't get out of. The cellular aging, the damaged mitochondria contribute to them becoming less efficient at clearing out those damaged cells. So we're less efficient at something called autophagy if we've got the damaged mitochondria. And it's that autophagy that clears out the damaged cells. And that stops us from developing those mutations on the cells. And of course, we could just be seeing fatigue. That could just be one of the symptoms. Without the mitochondria working efficiently, we're not going to have sufficient energy. So we can feel tired, we can feel sluggish, and we're just unable to perform at our best. So it may not even be on a disease front. It may just be that we're not feeling our best and we're struggling. So the term inflammaging really refers to this chronic, low-grade inflammation that underlies the aging process. And as we age, our bodies become less capable of resolving that inflammation, leading to this continuous low-level immune response. And that ongoing inflammation just wears down your body's systems and contributes to these age-related disorders, or things like cellular aging and fatigue, and creates this vicious cycle of increased inflammation. So research has shown that individuals who have lower levels of chronic inflammation actually tend to age more slowly and live longer healthier. So there is an impact on longevity here. The research into longevity really consistently highlights the importance of managing inflammation, and studies have shown that centenarians, so those who live to be 100 years old or older, typically have much lower levels of inflammatory markers in the body compared to those who have developed age-related diseases earlier in life. And reducing the chronic inflammation is improving health span. So it's improving the number of years that we live in good health. And that's really important. I talk about this in my book, Optimal You. We talk very much about how we want to live longer, but we actually want to live healthier longer. We focus on length of life a lot. We talk a lot about lifespan and about longevity. What we really should be talking about is that health span. We want to live longer, yes, but we want to live healthier longer. And that's really important. So let's look at some strategies for reducing chronic inflammation. The first thing is an anti-inflammatory diet. We want anti-inflammatory nutrition. A nutrient-rich anti-inflammatory diet is one of the most powerful tools for combating chronic inflammation. Looking at some general things that you can do, we want whole foods over processed foods. Processed foods are loaded with refined sugars, with unhealthy fats, with artificial ingredients. They all contribute to inflammation. So instead, we want to focus on whole and processed foods like fruit, veg, nuts, seeds, lean proteins, all of those things, whole foods, not processed. We then want to incorporate omega-3 fatty acids. So these are things that are found in things like your fatty fish, so things like salmon, as well as things like flax seeds, some nuts, avocados. They've all got really potent anti-inflammatory properties, and they work by reducing the proportion of pro-inflammatory molecules like cytokines in your body. We also want to boost antioxidants, so we want an antioxidant-rich diet. Foods rich in antioxidants, so things like berries, your dark leafy greens. Think those really dark foods, so anything that is the dark blues, the dark reds, as well as those dark leafy greens. Spices like turmeric all help combat oxidative stress, which is that key driver of chronic inflammation. So those antioxidants are neutralizing those free radicals. They help prevent the free radicals from damaging the cells, and that helps reduce chronic inflammation. We also want to limit sugar and refined carbohydrates. So those high sugar intake is going to spike those insulin levels. That's going to lead to more inflammation, increased visceral fat storage, and that's going to promote more chronic inflammation. So sugars and refined carbs, they're getting us into that inflammatory cycle that we really want to get out of. Another thing you can focus on is those anti-inflammatory herbs and spices. So things like the turmeric that we've already mentioned, ginger, cinnamon. They've all got really good natural anti-inflammatory properties, and you can easily incorporate those into your daily meals, and that can help to reduce overall inflammation in the body. In my book, Optimal You, I actually introduce you to a comprehensive 14-step anti-inflammatory nutrition plan. And this is designed to optimize energy, to reduce inflammation, and to enhance immunity. It's a plan that's focused on balancing your blood sugar levels. It promotes gut health. It's nourishing for the body, anti-inflammatory nutrients, balancing that immune function. It really is going to help you to fight chronic inflammation and boost your overall vitality and health span. You can get the full 14-step anti-inflammatory nutrition plan in the book. And when you get the book, you also get access to an online book resources section of our site, where we've got all the tools that we talk about in the book. Plus, we've got lots of recipes and things like that in there that can really help you on your journey so that you can reduce this inflammation and really get yourself on an anti-inflammatory nutrition plan. If you want to pre-order a copy of the book, you can jump to the links below this episode, or you can go to optimalyoubook.com. So outside of diet, what else can we do to reduce that inflammation? So exercise, regular physical activity, really important for managing inflammation. Exercise actually helps to regulate inflammatory markers. So it reduces the levels of that pro-inflammatory cytokines in the body, and it promotes the release of anti-inflammatory molecules like interleukin 10. It also helps to boost mitochondrial function. So exercise can enhance that mitochondrial efficiency, can help to improve that energy production, and helps to reduce that cellular stress. It also helps to promote healthy weight management. So it's reducing that visceral fat. So exercise directly lowers inflammation levels through that method as well. The key is to engage in moderate, regular exercise that includes both aerobic exercises, so things like you're walking, you're running, you're cycling, with strength training. Now, there is a caveat to this because excessive exercise, especially if you don't give your body proper time to recover, can actually increase inflammation in the body. So exercise is really beneficial and we need to get our bodies moving, but we do also need proper recovery time. So balance is key, and making sure that we're not overdoing it and keeping to moderate, regular exercise is actually the key to reducing inflammation in the body. We don't want to have something as beneficial as exercise starting to increase that inflammation. So make sure you're giving your body proper time to recover in between workouts. The next thing we need to look at is stress management. That chronic stress significantly contributes to inflammation. It's triggering that release of cortisol, which, as we discussed over time, is leading to that immune system suppression and increased inflammation. Things like mindfulness and meditation, practices in meditation, deep breathing and yoga, really been shown to help reduce cortisol levels and promote relaxation. One of my favorite tools for this is actually the Sensate device. I love this vagal toning device. It's hugely beneficial. I use it myself regularly. I've had lots of my patients who have used it, and every single one of them has come back and really loved using the Sensate. We'll link the Sensate below this episode. You can also use code NGHealth to get a discount on your Sensate. We'll link that as well below the episode. But I do find the Sensate a really brilliant tool for that relaxation and stress management, and also for helping to build resilience to stress, which is really equally important, as well as just relieving stress in the immediate time. We also want to build our immune resilience over time so that we cope with it better, because we're all going to come up against stresses in life. Another thing we can do is adequate rest and downtime. It is okay to rest. We live in a society these days where it's almost, a badge of honor to be busy all the time. It's okay to rest. Ensure that you've got rest and relaxation in your daily routine. It's really critical for stress management. Another thing that is really beneficial for this is time in nature. So getting out on walks, spending time outdoors, lowering those stress levels, and that really helps to reduce those inflammatory markers. And if you are really struggling with stress, sometimes supplemental support can be really beneficial in this area as well. I'll link below this episode the stress edit that we've done of supplements so that you can have a look at the things that we might use to support you on a stress management journey. The next thing that you can do is improve sleep quality. So poor sleep contributes to that chronic inflammation and disrupts that time where your body is in the natural repair processes. Some things that you can do if you don't sleep particularly well: try and stick to a regular sleep schedule. So go to bed and wake up at the same time each day. Really try and help to regulate that body's internal clock. Create a really good sleep conducive environment. So make sure your bedroom is cool, is dark, is quiet, is promoting that restful sleep. Keep your phone away from your bed. Limit caffeine in the afternoon and evening. Reduce screen time. Really important if you don't want to disrupt your sleep cycle. And if you are struggling with sleep, it can be really important to try and move that bedtime a little bit earlier. So a lot of us, when we're struggling with sleep, we start going to bed a bit later and a bit later and a bit later. And we really want to bring that forwards. Now, it can be really difficult to bring that forwards very quickly. So the way to do it is to bring things forward slowly. So you can just start going to bed 15 minutes earlier than your normal bedtime and just slowly creep that forward. When you feel like you're going to bed 15 minutes earlier and you're getting to sleep, just bring it forward another 15 minutes. Small steps are okay. Small steps get you where you need to be. If you improve by 1% every single day, in a year's time, you'll be 365% better than you are today. You do not need to make giant leaps. You need to take small, regular steps to improving things. So if you can just bring that bedtime forward just by 10, 15 minutes, it will have a knock-on effect. It will become more regular for you. You will get to sleep earlier and you can just start creeping it forwards. Other things we can do is reducing that environmental toxic load, choosing organic foods, getting rid of some of the pesticides that we are putting into our bodies, using non-toxic household products, so some natural chemical-free cleaning and personal care products, really important. Air quality as well, so improving that indoor air quality using air purifiers, opening windows, all really, really important. Again, I'll link some of these things below the episode. I use the Air Doctor for improving air quality, so as an air purifier. I'll link that below the episode, and I'll link some of the products that I use as well, some chemical-free products. All these lifestyle changes are really taking a comprehensive approach to tackling this chronic inflammation and really looking at the effects that it has on aging. So whether it's through nutrition, exercise, stress management, reducing that environmental toxic load, they're all proactive steps that really can make a significant difference in your health. The other thing that you can do for chronic inflammation, of course, is to look to functional medicine and the personalized approaches that we use within functional medicine and within nutrition. We really address that chronic inflammation in clinic. We focus on identifying and getting to the root cause of inflammation rather than just managing symptoms. And what we're doing with that is we are recognizing that every person's health is different. Every person's body is different. You all have a unique set of genetic, environmental, lifestyle factors that requires an individualized plan. So root cause analysis, we might look at things like gut health issues, nutrient deficiencies, hormonal imbalances, toxic exposure, all of these different things to get to the root cause of why you've got this chronic inflammation in the body. And then we can create these personalized plans to help you get to the bottom of your personalized root causes of the inflammation in the body. If that's something you want to do, you can look to work with us in clinic, and I'll drop the links below this episode. Don't forget that in the book, Optimal You, you've got that 14-step anti-inflammatory nutrition plan. We really delve very deeply into the relationship between nutrition, inflammation, and overall health. We look at the 8 pillars of health, and central to this book is this anti-inflammatory focus, focusing on strengthening your immune system and supercharging your energy. You can get your copy of the book now at the links below this episode, or go to optimalyoubook.com. I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode of the Good Health Podcast. We'll be back next week with another episode. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Good Health Podcast. Do share the episode with anyone you think it may benefit, and help us to spread the word on all things health and wellness by rating, liking, or subscribing to the podcast. If you want more, you can listen to more episodes on your favourite podcast app, or sign up to my newsletter for my favourite tips, tricks, health advice, brands, recipes, and more at nicolegoodhealth.com/newsletter. Have a lovely week. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Good Health Podcast.